Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Plant-Based Diets Small Changes, Big Impact webinar event. I am Deb Constien, and I have many roles with the Arthritis Foundation, a few being the central lead facilitator in the central region, and I also lead a connect group. I've also an arthritis patient, and I've been living with arthritis for over 38 years. This subject is near and dear to my heart. I'm a dietitian by trade and retired, formally medically retired, and I am, enthusiastic about every bit of what Ginger will be talking to us about. So can't wait to talk more about that. Let's see. All right. So our guest expert tonight will help us understand the role of a plant-based diet in managing arthritis, including its effects on controlling inflammation and simple strategies to incorporate a more plant-based diet in our everyday lives. And events like this are informed and driven by patients like you. With your input, we can create more educational tools, resources, and programs that will speak to what's really important to you and help you live your best life. That's why I'd like to share a short video with you to tell you about our Insights program so you can make your voice heard and help us create more programs like this one.
By taking part in the Live Yes Insights Assessment, you help change lives today, including your own. And you help change the future of arthritis. It takes just 10 minutes or less to share your experience and make a difference. Answer simple questions like how often you felt arthritis pain in the last week. Ongoing insights data from people like you will lead to new resources that ease daily life. Your insights show what kind of support you need in your community. You improve the healthcare system. You focus researchers and others on top priorities. You'll make more research funding possible, leading to new groundbreaking treatments. The power is in your hands to change things now and for the future. This is your opportunity to change the future of arthritis.
Fabulous. So just a note, we've also launched our JA Insights program. So if you're a parent of a child with JA, we strongly encourage you to enroll in that program as well. But before we begin, a few housekeeping notes for tonight's event. We have muted all attendees for this event, but you can direct any questions you may have throughout the presentation in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. This webinar has been broken down into two different parts. In the first part, our guest expert will help us understand the science behind plant-based diets, as well as share tips on how to get started. In the second part, she's going to demo some of her favorite simple plant-based recipes and share meal prep strategies to make eating plant-based as simple as possible. After tonight's session, you'll all receive an email about your experience tonight. These surveys help us track the success of these sessions and better plan for future events. So let's get started. Our guest speaker tonight is Ginger Hultin, and she has a master's degree in nutrition and is a registered dietitian nutritionist. She specializes in plant-based diets, integrative nutrition, oncology nutrition, supplements, lowering inflammation through food and nutrigenics, and she also owns the Seattle-based concierge nutrition practices, Champagne Nutrition, and a Seattle cancer nutritionist, where she helps clients optimize their health with an integrative approach. Ginger currently serves as an adjunct clinical faculty at Bastier's Center for Natural Health. She's teaching master level nutrition students, and she's also the author of Anti-Inflammatory Diet Meal Prep, 6 weekly plans and 80 plus recipes to simplify your healing, which helps take the guesswork out of any of your eating healthy and fighting inflammation with simple recipe plans and meal prep tips for any budget. Ginger, welcome and thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Should I start my screen? Here we go. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. 1 second.
Perfect. I think muting one would help. That's perfect. Thanks, Ginger. I think we're ready to go.
There we go. Good?
We're good.
Awesome. I've got 2 cameras going so I can show you all my recipes later. So thank you for coming. Thank you for that introduction. It's really fun to be working with Deb. We're here to talk about plant-based and how it might be able to help you and the ins and outs and whys and how, because there's so much information, misinformation, and I really just want to clear things up for you guys. So the first thing we should talk about, and this might already be confusing, is what is plant-based? So this is how we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about vegan, vegetarian, the many types of vegetarian, lacto-ovo, pescatarian, flexitarian, and omnivorous. As you can probably tell, it starts from the most strict or the one that has the most clear guidelines, vegan. That means you don't eat any animal foods at all, only plant foods. So no fish, no eggs, no dairy, no honey, nothing that comes from a plant. Vegetarian could mean a lot of things. Maybe you eat dairy, maybe you don't, maybe you eat fish or eggs, maybe you don't, maybe there's a combination. And then flexitarian is even more, maybe you eat a little bit of meat sometimes, maybe you don't. Can you still be a vegetarian or call yourself a vegetarian? I say, yeah, probably you can, because it really does kind of mean different things to different people. So when I first start working with people, I always say, what kind of vegetarian are you? Or what kind of vegetarian do you want to become? And then omnivorous just means you eat some meat, some plants, but probably most of you know, we all should be eating more veggies and more plants. So I wanted to get on the same page. I am going to be using the term plant-based a lot because it is flexible and most of us are just trying to move in that direction. So you've probably heard things about plant-based being healthy, right? A lot of people try to do vegetarian or vegan diets for their health. And of course, everybody here really probably is focused on lowering inflammation and lowering pain, right? And that is one thing that does show up in the research for plant-based diets. But when you're looking at all the large, long-term human studies, what we're seeing is that also plant-based diets can help people with their weight loss goals, right? Plant-based diets are tied to lower BMI in a lot of studies. Also, there's a reduced risk of certain cancers. I'm an integrative oncology expert, so that's very interesting to me. It can help you lower your high blood pressure, it can help lower LDL bad cholesterol, and it can also help balance blood sugar. So that's really helpful for anyone that's struggling with their blood sugar or type 2 diabetes. It can also help your heart. There's a decreased risk of ischemic heart disease. And then of course, there's benefits for animals, right? If you're into animal welfare. And then there's also environmental benefits, like a lot of them, fewer greenhouse gases being produced, less water usage for growing plants versus animals. So people come to me for all different reasons and say, I want to be plant-based because of X, Y, or Z. So it's really important to be aware. There's a lot of potential benefits here. Specifically about inflammation, because as you saw, I wrote a book about diet and inflammation. I know this is very relevant to a lot of people on the webinar today. CRP, I'm wondering who knows what CRP is. You probably have had it drawn in your blood. It's called C-reactive protein. It is a marker in the blood that shows if you're inflamed or not. There's other markers, and sometimes you're inflamed and your CRP is normal. So it's very complex, just like everything nutrition related. But I wanted to give you an example of what inflammation looks and feels like, right? So this is how I describe it to people. If you have a cut on your hand, it's red, hot, swollen, irritated, painful. So that is inflammation you can see. It's part of the body's natural healing process. That can also happen on the inside that you don't see, right? And so that could be an autoimmune disease, a type of cancer, an injury, some type of irritation going on inside the body, and that can drive your CRP up. So there is a lot of evidence that things in the diet can help calm that down. There's DNA damage and free radicals bouncing around. That literally just happens from living, breathing, digesting. Like, our body is always interacting with the environment, and it has a lot of work to do, right? Oxidative stress is another word for that. Your body is under constant stress because it's trying to live and survive in this environment. And all of these things can really cause, I don't know if I want to say cause, I want to say worsen or aggravate things like autoimmune diseases, cancer, diabetes, heart disease. Of course, every disease is quite complex and happens for different reasons, but there is an undeniable link between diet and health and inflammation. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's talk a little bit about balancing a plant-based diet. I don't know if anybody saw this, the US News report. It comes out every January, and it talks about the healthiest diets. They go through this team of experts and physicians, and they look at all the different diets out there from vegan to keto, and they say what's best for lowering heart disease risk, what's best for the environment, what's best for weight loss, what's best overall. And right here, what we're seeing best overall, they're all plant-based. And yes, a Mediterranean diet is plant-based, right? It's the majority plants, hardly any red meat. It is actually considered a type of plant-based diet. It's not necessarily vegan or even vegetarian, but it really is mostly plants. The DASH diet, if you're familiar with that, is dietary interventions for stopping hypertension. So we are looking at something that's very clinically relevant to anybody that has high blood pressure, but it also can help a lot of other conditions too. It's not vegan or vegetarian, but it's very plant-based and very whole foods forward. Flexitarian diet, that was actually started by a dietitian, not me, but a friend named Dawn Jackson Blattner. She wrote the book on being a flexitarian, and that could be really up to your interpretation. Maybe it's eating meat only on rare occasion. Maybe it's a meatless Monday type of diet. Maybe it's an anti-inflammatory type of diet. Today, we're going to talk about what is calming inflammation and what is promoting inflammation in the diet. And what you're really going to notice is a lot of plants on an anti-inflammatory diet and really whole foods, more unprocessed foods. So all of that type of concept fits into Mediterranean - flexitarian. The main point here is that there's a lot of ways to do this, and you can choose what speaks to you. Okay, so we should talk about what an anti-inflammatory diet is. So we're going to talk about foods that cool inflammation and foods that promote inflammation. And I did not make this up. This is actually just in the research, right? So what I did when I wrote my book is I went out there and I said, where is the human research, the good human research, and what are we seeing? How can we start to design an anti-inflammatory diet? What does that look like when I'm writing a cookbook? So yes, this is not my diet. This is generally what we know to be anti-inflammatory for humans. So the good news is, and everybody always asks me, what do I cut out? I always start by saying, what do I put in? So this is a list: whole grains, so high in fiber, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. Whole grains get a bad reputation, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but whole grains are at the top of the list. Beans and legumes, you might have some questions about that. We're going to talk about that one too, but they're very anti-inflammatory. Studies show this again and again and again. A lot of my clients just say, I forget about beans, so we're going to cook with them today. All fruit, I'm just going to say it again, all fruit is very anti-inflammatory. All veggies. You're probably wondering about nightshades. We're going to talk about them on the next slide. All veggies are inflammatory. Nuts and seeds, probably not surprising. Teas, spices, herbs, cocoa powder. I'm going to cook with a lot of those foods today. And, these kind of foods, they have antioxidants that help calm the body. They have vitamins and minerals that help to support the body, our healing, our immune system, right? The way that our brains work and all of our cells work. They also support gut health. Most of these foods are really high in fiber, right? That's an important part of the human natural diet, right? And what calms inflammation. So gut health, as you probably know, is extremely important for all health and for calming inflammation. So let's get to some of your biggest questions, and I bet you they're going to show up on this slide. I titled this slide, so let's start at the top. Foods to consider reducing or not, right? Because some of these we need to reduce, and notice that I'm saying reduce and not cut out completely, because usually in a general diet, there's some wiggle room. And I really want to acknowledge that some of you might be like, nope, gluten doesn't work for me. It makes me feel terrible. Cool. Someone else is saying, nope, citrus doesn't work for me, or beans don't work for me. That's totally fine. And everybody, definitely listen to your body and do what's going to be right for you. But what I want to present today is generally like, what do I eat? How do I calm inflammation? So if I'm saying anything that doesn't work for you, that is totally fine. Everybody's a little different. But what I'm going to start with here is highly or ultra processed foods. If I take a banana and I cut it, that's been processed in some way. So that's not exactly what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is a food that starts as a banana and then turns into like banana candy, right? It's been very, very, very far removed from how it started. I don't think there's any banana in banana candy, but as an example. So we're looking at foods that are very highly processed and are very far from how they started. Do we have to avoid every single processed food? No, we don't, because some of those foods are really helpful if you have any problems with mobility for cooking. There's actually some light processing that really makes our lives easier. We're going to talk about that today. But packaged foods and fast foods all the time can actually promote inflammation. We do need saturated fat in our diet. That is part of a healthy diet, right? But most of us get way too much. And most of us have an imbalance with saturated fat versus omega-3s. And if you're familiar, omega-3s are in fish oil. Sometimes we take it as supplements, chia seed, flax seeds, things like that. And I'm going to cook with chia seeds today. And some of you might be wondering, I don't like fish, or I'm allergic to fish, or I don't eat fish. What am I going to do? Can I take a supplement or not? Well, one thing you can do no matter what, especially if we're talking plant-based and you're going to take fish out of the diet, there's a lot of plant sources of omega-3s. Oops, let's go back. Sorry about that. Chia seeds, flax seeds, walnuts, hemp seeds. There's a lot of things you can do in the diet that have omega-3s. Some people do take supplements, and that's something that you can work with your registered dietitian on. You can talk to your doctor about. You just need to make sure that it's safe for you and get the dosing right. So that's something that you can definitely look into. But there's also that are plant-based. Also, sugar and sugar substitutes. Am I saying we can't eat anything sweet again? No, I would never say that. And I'm going to make something sweet today for you all. Most of us eat way too much sugar, right? That's just a natural part of the standard American diet. And at high levels, it can be inflammatory. They've done studies where they give people a highly sugary drink, like a soda, and then they test their inflammation levels, they went up. Like, we know that this is a correlation, right? What makes or breaks a diet is rarely just one food. It really is what we do all day, every day, in and out. Every time you eat, it's a decision that could cause or calm inflammation. So it's really the big picture. And I really want everyone to back up and think about it that way instead of worrying about individual foods. It's every food that you eat throughout the day that really makes a difference. So sugar, like white sugar, brown sugar, maple syrup, honey, all of those things are chemically similar to each other. They raise the blood sugar. They can cause inflammation at high levels. Most of the time when I'm cooking with a little bit of honey, which is not vegan, and a little bit of brown sugar sometimes, a little bit of maple syrup. The main thing with sugar is trying to do less. In almost every single one of my recipes, I cut it in half and then keep going down, because once you get used to it, having less sweet is actually very possible. Sugar substitutes like sugar alcohol, xylitol, sorbitol, aspartame, like all of these ones that come in the packet, right? A lot of those are made in a lab and they're highly processed, right? They affect people in different ways. They're all over our food supply. Some of them can cause some GI discomfort. There's just a lot to talk about. We should do a whole presentation on that. But I will tell you that, a lot of my clients use a little bit of monk fruit here and there, a little bit of stevia here and there. Those are sugar substitutes, meaning they don't raise your blood sugar, but they actually do come from a plant, not a lab. they are still highly processed. So we'll talk, we can talk more about this. Let me know if you have questions about it specifically, but I want to move on to wheat and gluten, because you saw that I said whole grains are good for you. The reason for that is it's high in fiber, vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants, but also there's this protein called gluten, and a lot of people, especially with autoimmune diseases, don't always do well with gluten. But some people do totally fine with gluten, right? The main thing is if you're celiac, if you have celiac disease, that means that you can't tolerate wheat at all. And it's like very irritating to the body. It makes you very sick. So then you need to not eat gluten at all. That's important. Some people have a full out wheat allergy or a gluten allergy. That can happen. A lot of people are just living with intolerances. And so the most important thing is that you learn what's right for you. With a lot of my patients, I'll do an elimination diet. We'll take something out like gluten, and then we'll add it back in and see how your symptoms do. So instead of just cutting it out and just saying it's bad for everyone, I really like to take an individual approach. And that's what I suggest for you. It works totally fine for some people. And there is a lot of science and evidence that says whole grain like wheat is anti-inflammatory. So this is an individual one. Same thing with nightshades. If you're unfamiliar with nightshades, and I'm guessing you all have heard of it before, we're talking a class of vegetables that have a compound called solanine. Tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, paprika. There's like a whole little class here, but I think tomatoes and potatoes are the most common. In some people, and I've heard this before, they don't do well with this group. The vast majority, like 98% of people, do completely fine, and these foods are anti-inflammatory. I was trying for my book so hard to find evidence that said that these foods are inflammatory in humans generally. I couldn't find it. Over and over and over. Tomatoes and potatoes and eggplants were calming inflammation in people. So again, maybe this is worth a trial to see how you do with it, but a lot of people are taking out foods that they love when they're not necessarily reacting. So again, this is individual, not a blanket, take it out. Dairy, same thing. Some people do very well with dairy, some people don't. Some people have an issue with the protein, some people have an issue with the lactose. So there's a lot of non-dairy options, and if you're vegan, then you won't eat dairy. So I'm going to cook with some plant-based milks today to show you a little bit of what that's like. Dairy works great for some people. Other folks don't do well with it at all. So this is another one that's individualized. That's why it's black and not red. And finally, lectins. Lectins, I'm wondering who's heard of that. There's two schools of thought with anti-inflammatory. One is kind of what I'm talking about, whole foods, plant-based. And another one is the autoimmune protocol. And I'm not saying that that's bad, it's just very different. And they're taking out a lot of the foods that I'm talking about. So this is one way. There is another way that people often are thinking about, but you can't get them crossed. So lectins are a type of compound in a lot of plants, especially beans and lentils and some veggies, and some people that don't do well with them, and so they need to take them out. I can tell you that's very restrictive, and you know what? If this works for you, I am happy that you're getting really relief in your symptoms. But most people actually do really, really well with beans and lentils and foods like that, whole grains, and they treat them very well, and they feel better when they eat them. I do get some questions about the digestibility of beans, and I am cooking with beans today. I opened a can of them because I was doing some preparation for you all, and I rinsed them off, because when you rinse off canned beans, you take some of the gassiness out of them, right? So another thing I do with beans, people say, I'm going plant-based, I'm going to start eating beans. And then they eat a lot of beans, and then they feel very uncomfortable. So if you're new to beans or lentils, they're extremely high fiber. I would definitely suggest going slow. So starting with a very small amount and working your way up as your body gets used to it. That's one of my best tips for beans if you want to incorporate more. All right. So if you're trying to get started with all of this and you're like, what do I do? My biggest advice to you is to focus on foods that are familiar and that you enjoy. So don't go from how you've been eating to completely different. That can be hard on you and your family, and you can feel a little lost. So, if you're used to eating burgers every Tuesday night, then try a plant-based burger. Of course, those are more processed, right? And they are high in saturated fat because they've got coconut oil in them, because they're trying to mimic regular burgers, but it might be a path to get you and your family more comfortable with plant-based, and then you can move to tofu after that, even though tofu is awesome. I'm going to cook with it today for you. Go slow, take it one step at a time. Maybe you just go vegetarian or vegan at breakfast. Then the next month you try lunch, and then you do snack, and then you do dinner. Or maybe you do meatless Mondays and get used to that, and then you start to spread it to the rest of your week. You don't have to do it all at once. Little bits can make a big difference. And it's really hard to say exactly like you need to go meatless once a week and you need to go meatless 5 days a week. It's hard to say what exactly is going to be best for any individual person. I will tell you that any less animal products you eat can show significant benefits to the environment and to animal welfare, but also sometimes to your health too. People notice a significant reduction in LDL bad cholesterol, for example, when they cut out sometimes cheese or dairy or eggs. Other people will notice a decrease in their pain and inflammation. So you'll have to figure out when you feel best on a plant-based diet. And honestly, if you're interested in this, I would start today. I'm going to offer you some resources, right? You have my anti-inflammatory diet book. That's like a meal prep book. We're going to talk about meal prep today. My Champagne Nutrition blog has all sorts of recipes. They're all plant-based and very easy too. And then, as far as if you're thinking, well, I want to do it, but there's no way my family is going to do it, I've got some tips for you too, right? You need to get their buy-in. A lot of people think or see plant-based as like a threat or like we're going plant-based. And I really try to spin it around to be much more positive. Get people to choose their own veggies. What do you want to do? Serve things like make your own bowl and people can put in their own choices. Like kids are so much more likely to eat foods that they picked out themselves. So you really have to work together to get that buy-in and not see it as a punishment. Instead, see it as like, we're doing this for our health. I feel better and I know you want that for me. So those are a few tips to get you started. So let's go to the next slide and then I'm going to show you how to cook. You might be wondering too, like, yeah, this is going to be really expensive though, and I don't have time to like do all that prepping and shopping and it's going to be really overwhelming. I'm going to show you today, and this is a little crazy. I'm keeping an eye on the time because I'm going to try to do 3 recipes in like 20 minutes. And the way I'm going to do that is by keeping it super simple and affordable. When you're trying this new way of eating, I want you to focus with foods again, focus on foods that you're really familiar with and you enjoy. Take it one step at a time, right? And just make sure that you are incorporating slowly in a way that works for you. You want to utilize frozen and canned foods, right? It's so interesting. Frozen and canned foods sometimes have more nutrients than fresh foods because they were canned or frozen right off the tree, and the foods that are in your grocery store might have been around for a while, like on a truck and sitting around, and so they're losing their nutrients. So if canned and frozen works for you and it's can be more affordable, it's just a really nice way to go. I'm going to use those foods today. All right, let's go to the next slide. This is where we get cooking, and I'm super excited, and I know that Deb's gonna come back. I am gonna do a few recipes, and I just wanna tell you right now that I'm not focused very specifically on like the ins and outs of each recipe. I wanna give you the knowledge of where to find them so that you can follow along that way and you have access. But what I really wanna show you today is how to do this on your own when you're at home and you're not feeling very well, or your hands are hurting that day, or you don't really feel like standing. This is how you do meals for the week in 20 minutes. So I'm going to do my overnight oats. Those specifically are in my anti-inflammatory diet meal prep book. That's directly from there. Same with the minestrone soup. The minestrone soup is also on my blog. And then I'm going to kind of just freestyle the tofu sheet pan meal. My favorite thing to do is when I'm finishing my workday, throw tofu on a sheet pan with some veggies and pop it in the oven. Actually, I'm going to preheat my oven right now, and while I'm prepping all this stuff, you'll notice that I'm doing a non-cook recipe, a stove recipe, and an oven recipe. So when you're thinking about how to cook dynamically, you really want to make sure that you are thinking about the strategy, right? And you're going to notice when I turn my next camera on, when you can see it, I've got everything laid out. I did a little bit of prep yesterday. If prep is making you really tired or it doesn't work for your life, get your teams in the kitchen, right? Or ask a friend for help, or think about doing some of those frozen or canned foods to make it a little bit easier. I love to lay everything out and then do it all at once. So I'm in, out, done, and I save myself hours later in the week. I do have a tofu sheet pan meal up on the blog, so you can definitely look at it there. So those are your resources. I think we're ready to start cooking. Deb, are you here with me?
I am. Before you actually get going, we've got one question that we wanted to ask you. So how much stevia and monk fruit is okay to use?
You know, it's so there's no like, this is exactly how much. It's really hard to say. I will tell you that stevia is sweeter than sugar. So most people are going to use a lot less, right? It also has a little bit of a different flavor. So you're just going to have to see how that works for you. There are really there are guidelines for actual sugar, right? There's a gram and teaspoon amount for men versus women, depending on how many calories you're eating. The same is true for saturated fat. So for some foods, there are very, clear guidelines, but for a lot, there's not. That is why, again, working with a dietitian is so key. We can tell you how many calories you need, how much protein, how much of any of these things. Here's your meal plan. Like, it is awesome. You know this because you are a dietitian too.
Perfect. That's great answer. So I couldn't have said it any better myself. So, all right. So Ginger's going to hop right in and she's going to start showing some of her demo and getting her 3 recipes done. Can't wait. This is going to be awesome.
I am trying to start my video, but it is not starting. Oh, there we go. Let's see.
All right, and Ginger's going to actually show basically herself chopping and that kind of stuff. You're not going to be, Ginger's not going to be looking at us. So just giving you guys all a heads up on that. And I'm going to interject with arthritis friendly tips and tricks that I've established over the years. And seeing my hands, you'll understand why. Ginger, we can't hear you right now. I think you need to unmute. There you go.
How's that?
Okay. I think we're,
there we go. Good.
okay, perfect. That's actually perfect.
Great. Okay, let me give you a little lay of the land. So this is my station for soup, right? I've got my soup over here. I've got my sheet pan right here, and I've got my overnight oats right here. So I'm not going to do one at a time. I'm going to do all at the time. So let me tell you where I'm starting. My rice, I've already got it cooking on the stove. Rice and other whole grains like quinoa, they're so easy to just prep, hands off, let them go. And that's going to be the base for a lot of different recipes this week. I need to get my minestrone soup started. And in the meantime, I turned my oven on. So, whoop.
Awesome. I love it. And again, that actually helps helps so much with, organization and, work simplification. That's huge for folks with arthritis.
We want to keep this easy, right? If you're not feeling well or you're having problems with mobility, you just really need it to be as simple as possible. But you know what? Maybe you aren't in pain, but you just have a really busy life or a busy family, or maybe you have both. So I'm going to get this olive oil started. And what you're going to see is me using some pre-chopped stuff. I chopped this, but like I said, these are my onions. Make someone else chop it or buy it frozen or pre-chopped. That can save you so much time.
That was going to be one of my tips and tricks. That is absolutely perfect.
I love it. What exactly do you do? And I'm going to talk to you while I'm doing a little garlic and onion.
Yeah. So when I'm doing Thanksgiving or something like that, I do the stuffing. So I always make sure that during that time when I'm preserving my chopping and things like that, I definitely, look to the store-bought chopped onions and celery. So it's already pre-done, or the frozen version as well. And, as far as even opening up cans, finding there are Arthritis Foundation friendly openers. Electric openers are obviously the best. I have a fused wrist, and it's my right hand. So actually doing that cranking, that wouldn't be so good.
I was just thinking about an electric opener because I was working on my diced tomatoes. And again, I'm going to use diced tomatoes instead of dicing them myself because that's so much more work. This is a great product. Definitely a automatic opener would be great if you have any issues with hands or wrist. And my other favorite product in the whole world is this pre-chopped garlic. Do you use
Oh,
that?
yes, I do. I love it. It's already ready to go, and it tastes, just as fresh, and it's great. I
It
love
is
that.
it is my favorite. This is just going to get cooking. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to, get this started, and then I'm going to move on to something else. And it's really fun because that makes your house smell good, right? So my
Yeah.
oven's heating, my rice is cooking, and here comes my garlic and onion. I don't try to overthink it too much. Of course, in my recipes, I have, different types of 1 cup of beans or measurements that you should do. But I also eyeball a little bit, and I just really want people to find that flexibility in cooking and not be too rigid. Use what you have on hand and just make it easy for yourself. I think we need to relax and enjoy and have fun with cooking. So while this is getting soft, I'm going to use a ton of herbs and spices in my soup. I'm going to do oregano and basil. You can do dried or fresh. Dried is easier. You don't have to chop it, right? So again, making your life easier. You saw on the anti-inflammatory list that you really want to use lots of herbs and spices because it's very anti-inflammatory and calming to the body. So that's just going to hang out in there for a minute.
I love it. And I actually have fresh herbs during the summer. So I always, run out to my garden and grab fresh herbs if you have it. But if you don't, again, you cook from your pantry, you cook from what you got. That's, again, something else that I always recommend. And also cooking double. So you can actually, on those really bad days, pull something out of the freezer. And that just, saves so much energy.
If you get into a flare and you're not feeling well and you have food in your freezer that makes you feel good, it is so powerful. I recommend that to my clients all the time.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a ton of veggies. I honestly use so many more veggies than I even wrote in my recipe. I've got beans that I cut myself. You could do canned, absolutely, or frozen. Carrots, I just use baby carrots because those have a double benefit, right? I can snack on those, or I can chop them, or I could just not chop them. And then I have a zucchini at the bottom. And foods like zucchini, they're much softer and easier to chop. So whether that's for you or whether you're supervising a youngster in the kitchen, that can be really nice and safe. So I'm just going to dump all of this in and let it soften for about 10 minutes, and we're going to move on. Are you ready?
Absolutely. Ready to rock and roll. Just to let everybody know that is joining us, that we do, that Ginger has provided some recipes and meal plans, and it's going to be on our arthritis.org website. So the website is arthritis.org/veg meal plan. So VEGMEALPLAN, and that will get you right to that.
I'm really excited. If you guys try those recipes, you've got to let me know by connecting with me on social media or getting on my newsletter. I am going to get a little heat on here. I noticed that I needed a little bit of liquid, so I'm just using the liquid from this. So here we go. Here we go. And I'm actually going to cover it just so I can get some heat on it.
Perfect.
Everything good?
Absolutely.
All right. Let's move on to the sheet pan because it's right here in front of me and it's insanely simple. Do you use sheet pan meals? I'd love to know.
I do. I actually do. And it's actually, those are growing in my, menagerie of recipes that I actually use. And they are super easy. Again, it's like one thing that you have to wash at the end of the night. So I love it.
It is so simple. I literally do this most of the time. So I'm getting a little sun glare. It's sunny in Seattle for the first time in a while. What I did again is I pre-chopped. So I pre-chopped my broccoli, it's on the bottom, and my cauliflower on top. You could absolutely use frozen again, or make someone else do the chopping for you. So these are cruciferous vegetables. They're extremely anti-inflammatory. They're also very anti-cancer. And I'm just gonna put them on part of my sheet pan, right? Just for beauty and for health there. I do want some color on my sheet pan, so I'm going to make sure and get my carrots on here. Again, these are just my baby carrots, so I'm using one pack and I'm spreading them into different recipes. And I wasn't super precise about it. I just put about as many as I thought would look good in a sheet pan. So there they are. And then I'm dying to talk about tofu. This is firm tofu. I chopped it up and I put a paper towel in it because it's a little moist, right? And I don't want it to get too wet. The drier it is, the more it's gonna bake well. Does that make sense? Tell me how you feel about tofu.
Actually, we don't use it often, but actually I love using it. I've got a couple recipes where we grind it up and we um, use it as like it would be the similar of just like ground beef or something like that, or ground turkey or ground pork, any of those type of things. So it takes on that consistency and making sloppy joes out of it. I'm using like I'm a Wisconsinite, so again, I'm probably using terms that folks may not use, but barbecue, something like that. And we do have one quick question is, Ginger, what is the best type of rice that you recommend?
Oh, thank you for asking. I have it right here. I wanted to show it to you all. This is how I keep my rice in this type of container. I'm just using brown rice, and sometimes I mix it up between jasmine, long grain, and short grain. So let me just show you what it looks like here cooked. It is so simple. I don't use anything special. I don't even rinse it or do any of that stuff you're supposed to do. I just put it in 2-to-1 ratio and let it go. So this is going to
Love
be
it.
awesome. This is going to be my base for the sheet pan. But
I
brown rice is very high in fiber and nutrition compared to white rice.
Perfect. Also, one other question that came in is about tofu and hypothyroidism. Anything to talk about that, and soy and its potential effects on the inflammatory?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So sometimes people tell me that they think soy is anti-inflammatory. And again, some people are allergic to it, right? Or some people don't feel well with it. That's totally fine. But in general, the research shows again and again and again that it's very anti-inflammatory. So soy is an extremely anti-inflammatory food. So whether you're eating tempeh, tofu, miso, edamame, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I eat edamame all the time. They don't realize like all the different types of tofu. While I'm talking, I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of olive oil, right? Because that's going to be nice in the oven, even over the tofu. I'm not going to overthink it and do different flavors. I'm just going to literally do some salt and pepper, and then I can add sauce later if I want.
Love
And then
it.
about soy and thyroidism, that's a really interesting question. So there have been some studies at really high levels that some people will have an interaction with their medication. And so that's something that you should just be aware of. But, you know, none of the recommendations, including mine, are to eat really high levels of soy. And I've never met anybody in my whole life that was having problems with hypothyroidism when they're eating 1 to 3 servings of soy a day. Right here, you know, this is a pack of soy. And I mean, probably like 2 or 3 people would eat this. So I don't want you like eating like piles and piles of it, but you shouldn't be afraid of eating moderate amounts as part of a nice plant-based diet. In fact, if you're vegan, you really need soy in your diet. It's a very important protein source. So a little bit of olive oil, you know, just to the feeling. I think I did about 2 or 3 tablespoons. Again, this is going to be meals for probably, you know, 4 or 5 meals. So that's going to really get spread out. I keep my salt and pepper right here. I'm not afraid of salt, right? Because when you're eating a whole foods plant-based diet, you get very little salt. It's when you start eating a lot of processed foods that you start getting a lot of the salt. So I'm just going to sprinkle some on. It adds a lot of flavor to plant-based foods. I could do other types of herbs and spices if I wanted, but right now, we've been talking, I think that was about 5 minutes. This is ready to go. I'm going to stick it in the oven. Are you ready?
Perfect. Yeah, let's go.
Here we go.
Look how easy that is, everybody. I love these ideas. And again, such a, easy thing to do. One thing I was going to actually point out is whenever you're chopping veggies, I have my kitchen table that is right next door. So I sit down and chop my veggies so I don't have to keep standing. I also have a garbage bowl sitting right there so I can just go ahead and prep right there and use the garbage bowl so I'm not running back and forth to the trash can. So one thing as far as that goes. We did have a question come up and I was going to ask it myself is to see what Ginger was going to say. But the sodium content and the canned vegetables like your tomatoes, or if you were to use canned beans or anything like that.
Yeah, so when I do my canned beans, I'll just drain it, and when you rinse it off, then you're going to rinse off the sodium.
Okay,
Let's
so
see,
you recommend going ahead and just rinsing, throwing them into a quick strainer and then rinse.
Yep, I'm just looking at this one. A lot of times I'll buy no added salt.
I do too.
Yeah, this one has 190 milligrams of sodium, so that's actually very low, especially when you balance it with all the potassium that's in here. So that's not going to be a concern. I have this veggie broth I'm going to use. I did get low sodium. You can see that here. And then I'm going to add my own salt as needed. This one in 1 cup, I'm going to use 4 cups, has 130. So that's, again, really, really moderate. These are not high sodium foods. Yeah.
Perfect. Also, do you, what is your temperature that you put the sheet pan in, and how long will it stay in the oven?
Oh yeah, thank you. I should set my timer. I put it in at 350, but I'm going to boost it up to 365. And I'm going to do a timer for about 30 minutes.
Okay.
Which is cool because that is how long my rice takes, right? So I'll often do it at the same time. And then that's about how long my soup takes. So when I'm doing these at the same time, I've done 30 minutes, but I have many meals. So let me, my soup is really coming along. The veggies are getting soft. I'm on medium heat right now. So what is next? My diced tomatoes and my broth. So here they go. Again, diced tomatoes are so much easier than freshly diced tomatoes, but you could also like throw in a bunch of cherry tomatoes. I mean, there's different options. Yeah. And then 4 cups of broth, I'm just going to do the whole thing. Again, it's low sodium. If you need more sodium, some people do, feel free to use regular sodium. It's up to you.
Perfect. And as far as salt goes, do you usually recommend table salt or any other type of, flake salt or anything like that?
A lot of times I'll use kosher salt because I like the big flakes.
I do too. And actually, I'm 100% behind you. That's in my little pinch bowl next to my stove.
I will tell you that if you are vegan, you do need to sometimes think about your iodine, right? Because a lot of us will get iodine from dairy and from seafood. So if you are concerned at all about iodine in your diet, then you might want to consider iodized salt. That iodized salt is actually the major way that most of us get iodine in the diet. So that is something you should think about.
Yeah, to avoid any sort of goiter, because that's not something you want to deal with.
No, yep. Exactly. So that's going to sit, and then I'm going to add the pasta and beans right before we end.
Perfect. If I keep asking a question, are you still good?
I love it. I'm just grabbing my beans. Here they are, all drained and ready to go.
Love it. So what is the importance of going organic, and which fruits or vegetables are most important for folks that are concerned about the price of organic and doing everything organic? Do you have a pinpoint? I know there's like a top 12.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There is a Dirty Dozen, and the way that the Dirty Dozen was developed was, looking at a selection of produce from across the country and just seeing how much pesticide residue was on the outside. And a lot of this has to do with how fruits and veggies are grown. And actually, I should start mashing my bananas while I'm talking to you, and then I'll explain what I'm doing.
Perfect.
So like, for example, celery is kind of hard to grow, and it grows in wet climates, like wet environments. Yep. And so it actually gets a lot of like mold and toxins, not toxins, that's not a toxin, but like it gets some icky stuff on it. And so they use more pesticides, for example, on celery. So that's one reason that, some people choose to do organic celery. So sometimes it has to do with the way it's grown. Bananas, they have a thick skin, like I'm peeling the skin off. So, as far as like our health, you might not worry as much about this being organic. However, the farmers that are picking these are also exposed, right? So I think when we talk about organic, we're not just talking about ourselves, we're also talking about the environment. So, I am pro-organic. I think it's a really important farming practice, and it's good for the environment. We probably, as a sustainable food system, need some of both, right, moving forward. So it's not like non-organic is bad. It just, there's a lot of considerations here, but the bottom line is I'm going down my rabbit hole is that I know there's so much to say. You need to eat foods that work for you and your family. So if you're choosing between eating organic cherries or no cherries, I want you to choose the non-organic cherries, right? Because you got to get what's on sale and you need to get what's available to you. I think my blueberries today are not organic because the organic ones were really, really expensive. And so I just got non-organic this time, and I just kind of mixed it up and I made that decision in the moment. There's not very good research at all that shows that non-organic is bad for your health, right? The human studies just haven't shown that. So I honestly do it more for environmental benefits. That is my main focus. What do you think? Do you have anything to say about this, Deb?
I think the things that I think it's strawberries and berries that I think more about the processing, and again with the pesticides and things like that end up they're spraying the plants and things like that. So that those tend to be a little bit more as far as what I try to look at as far as that goes. But I agree with you definitely as far as the processing and things like that. Also, I just wanted to repeat the URL for the recipe that Ginger is cooking. It's at arthritis.org/veg meal plan, VEGMEALPLAN. Okay, also another question. So the nutritional differences between tempeh, miso, tempered vegetable protein, which one is the best in your opinion?
Yeah, so they're all a little bit different. So for example, tofu is the highest in calcium because of the way that it's made and processed. Tempeh is fermented, and so a lot of people like to do more fermented foods for their gut health. Miso also is fermented, so that'd be another good one there. As far as protein, vitamins, and minerals, all of them are kind of similar. I do like to go for the more unprocessed type of soy, right? Like the whole food soy. That's my favorite. So I do a lot of tempeh, tofu, edamame versus the meat substitutes. But you know what? There's room for those too. Was that 4? I think that was 4.
Oh shoot, I saw 3, so I'm not sure.
I'm going to do a little bit more because you know what? We don't have to be perfect. That's exactly.
The truth. I'm one that definitely cooks by by eye versus actually measuring cups. Unless it's a dessert, then desserts, everything's off on that. I tend to measure more if I'm baking.
Baking is a food science, so I think you're correct on that one. Any other questions right now, or should I show this one? We have time, I think.
There's one more question. Where does molasses fit in with the sugar discussion? Good or bad?
I don't actually call any food good or bad, and all sweets can really fit in different ways. Molasses is interesting because it is a source of different minerals, so it's beneficial for that. It's a little bit lower glycemic, right? So I guess in some ways it would be lower in sweetness and higher in minerals, so perhaps it would be better. But it also has a very specific flavor, and so you can't use it in everything. So I would say weave that in with other types of sweeteners, but again, the most important thing is that you're using less, right? Less sweetness is generally what we're going for, and you'll see I'm doing that now. The only sweet in this entire recipe, this is my overnight oats, is banana.
Perfect. Wow. Look at that.
There's no other sugar at all.
With a great handle. That's another thing I always think about with arthritis-friendly tools is the weight of them. Pots and pans, think about the weight. Again, you've got a wonderful handle on that, and that looks incredibly user-friendly. I love it. And knives, I think about the weight of my knives as well. So all these things with tools. And again, you're using plastic, which is nice and light for the your measuring spoon. So again, love that too.
Yep, this one's a little heavier. So if lifting things up is hard for you, then you're gonna wanna split this up, right? So this is my non-dairy milk. I think I'm using soy milk, unsweetened. This would be very heavy if you have issues with hands or wrist.
Okay.
So in that case, I would break it up and do 4 of these instead. So I did 4 cups of oats-ish. I'm going to do 4, an equal amount of liquid. So that's going to go in the banana. I'm going to do liquid to liquid, dry to dry. I'm going to do some vanilla. And again, this recipe is in my anti-inflammatory cookbook. So if you want the ratios, I'm saying some of them out loud, but also you know that they're going to be on the blog.
And also, it's definitely in that that document that I'm referencing. All of the temperatures and full instructions are all there. So I'm just letting everybody know that as well.
Nobody should stress out at all. You're going to have access to me. You're going to have resources. And like I said, this isn't as much about the actual recipes right now. We're going to give you the links to those. This is more about how to meal prep and how to make your life easier. I really want you to walk away empowered, like, hey, I could do that.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you for doing that. We definitely so appreciate your time and energy with offering that. So we have a couple questions on the soy effects on hormones. I'll let you hit that one first.
Oh, yeah, I'm so glad you asked. And while I'm answering that, I'm going to do some cinnamon. Cinnamon is a very anti-inflammatory, calming spice. Let's go a little cinnamon crazy. I'm going to sprinkle it in. Remember, this is going to make like 6 breakfasts. So you're not just making it for one, you're really expanding on that. I also have a 1/4 cup of chia seeds. Remember, these are high in fiber, vitamins, minerals, and the anti-inflammatory plant-based omega-3s. These are going to gel up nicely. They are awesome. So let's pause there and I will answer soy and cancer. I talk about this every single day because I'm an oncology expert. There is some old research from the 1980s and 90s. It's not that old. I'm that old, but it still is old research. And so it's not that old, I'm telling you. It was done on mice and rats. It was all this animal studies, and they saw that when animals like mice and rats eat soy, that they had higher levels of circulating estrogen. Then a few years later, they did the research on humans and found out, oops, this is a place where animal research and human research doesn't translate very well. Actually, soy is anti-cancer for humans. Do not fear soy and do not think it is going to cause feminization of children or men. That is unsubstantiated. So it's really sad because a lot of myths make people not eat soy when it's such a healthy food.
I love that.
I really want you guys to not fear soy.
I have heard that so many times, people getting all worked up on eating, like men, like just making comments about the just feminization of men and not eating their edamame anymore or anything like that. Okay, so let's see. Thoughts on iodine deficiency. Again, there's a lot of processed foods and other that are fortified with iodine because our soil is depleted. So when we eat mostly non-processed foods, can you end up with too little in your diet?
Yeah, that is an interesting question. We should talk about it. I am putting my pasta in right now. I just put my beans in. This is bean pasta. It is pasta that has one ingredient, and that's beans. So fiber, protein. And, you know, I could also use whole wheat, but today I'm using bean pasta, and that's going to go for 15 minutes. And then my soup is done. There's 2 people in my house. This is going to feed us for a week. So I'm so happy. And the whole time my rice is cooking, my tofu is cooking in the oven. So I'll pull that out before we end. Yes, there is some evidence that our soils are depleted. Yes, when you eat a plant-based whole food diet, you're going to have less salt, you're going to have less iodine. So some people actually might need to consider some types of supplementation, right? If you're vegan, you have to supplement with B12. It's dangerous not to. Some people might need to supplement maybe with iron, maybe with calcium, but that really needs to be assessed as an individual level. You shouldn't supplement blindly. You should supplement based on your work with your registered dietitian and some blood labs. Vitamin D is another one that comes to mind too.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. Do you have an alternative for tomatoes in the soup?
Oh, you know, I would just not put them in and put maybe a different veggie.
Yeah, too.
Yeah, just leave them out. That's a really cool thing. I would add in, more other veggies, and then you just don't do tomato, and that is totally cool. Some of them they cause heartburn too. Oh, I wanted to show this to you. Do you know what this is? This is powdered peanut butter. I got it just for you all because I wanted to show you a whole foods way to add protein, because people ask me about that all the time. It is awesome. I'm going to put in a half cup because I really want to boost the protein in this oat breakfast.
Okay. And do you have an alternative for oats?
Yeah, just do quinoa. Yep.
Okay, perfect. That's awesome. Do you feel that bone broth is better than regular broth?
No, I feel like it's equal. The problem is, we're talking about plant-based, so bone broth obviously wouldn't be appropriate for a lot of my plant-based clients. And there is a lot of nutrients and healing properties in plant-based broths too, right? A lot of vitamins and minerals. So that's usually what I work with. But if you like bone broth and it works for you, then that is cool. The last thing I'm going to do as I'm making my overnight oats is I'm going to do like a lot of berries because they're so good. They're so anti-inflammatory. There's a cup. Should I do one more cup? What do you think?
I think you should.
I love it.
Yeah, bring it on. And the purple color is so pretty. And who doesn't like blueberries? I'm sure there's some of you out there, but you could add raspberries, frozen raspberries, or anything like that. So that looks wonderful.
So good. This is going to thicken right up, and then I'm going to portion it in the cutest thing in the world in these mason jars.
Oh,
and I'm going to put them
adorable. So they're already right there with portion sized and everything. I love it.
And you know what's in there? Grab it for breakfast or snack. That'll take me 5 minutes, and I'm literally done with breakfast all week.
That's powerful. Yeah, everybody needs to make sure that they're getting that meal plan, the PDF at arthritis.org/veg meal plan, VEGMEALPLAN. Another question, turmeric, better to cook with spice or take supplement?
Ooh, you know what? I should put some turmeric on my tofu. I think that would be a really good idea. I keep it in the freezer. I grate it on everything because it's extremely anti-inflammatory and delicious. If you're going to supplement, you really just need to talk to your medical team and make sure it's not interacting with anything else that you're on. I think a lot of times we don't realize that supplements can interact with medications and other supplements. So definitely just think about that. A lot of my clients do. It needs to be taken on individual basis, but I do use it in cooking all the time. Let's check out the tofu.
Okay. Love to see how it looks. Sometimes people are asking about the jar openers or lid openers. I actually use just those round ones that are it's a little grippy on one side and it is smooth on the other. Those work fabulous, and I know that they are used often. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were showing everybody how pretty that looks.
Oh no, that's really important, the jar openers.
Yes.
This is so beautiful. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. It hasn't yet been a half hour. It needs a little bit more time, but let me show it to you. The fun thing about sheet pan meals is they look so beautiful. So my tofu is starting to steam. My veggies are starting to get a little brown and they're starting to get soft. I'll sometimes pierce them with a fork just to see, if they're chewable.
I do that with broccoli for sure, but look how pretty green they're turning right now. I love that.
Isn't that great? I'm going to put it in for a few more minutes. My soup is finishing too. My rice is done. And then I'm just going to portion my oats, and we have literally made probably 15 meals in the 20 minutes that we've been doing this.
Oh, that's amazing. And again, such a time saver and everything else as far as that goes. Somebody is asking about a kitchen tool for straining beans and pasta and veggies. I have, again, it's probably not good mentioning brands, but Pampered Chef has a tool. It's a small tool. It's probably 4 inches by 4 inches, and it fits over a standard, like the can size that you had for your tomatoes. It fits right over that, and you just take it right to your sink and dump it over. And as far as pasta and, just a light, I don't use a metal one. I use a plastic strainer, and it's again light and easy to, use right away. Let's see, another question about cinnamon. Can too much cinnamon be unhealthy? And again, I think you kind of alluded to that as far as, you have to just be careful with and talk to your provider if there's any interactions and things like that, right?
I will tell you that I eat a lot of cinnamon.
I do too. And I have a heavy hand with cinnamon because I love the flavor so much.
It's really, really good. I don't limit any herbs or spice. I use as many as possible every day. Like I actually load it up, and the evidence just shows they're very anti-inflammatory. Can you have too much of any food? Yes.
Yeah.
And so you could absolutely overdo it on cinnamon. It's very strong. So you actually could get to a point where you're like, oh, this has too much cinnamon, and that would be a shame. So I sprinkle on it here. Yeah. You just you don't want to do too much on the herbs and spices with the flavor.
She said somebody commented that they heard that too much is toxic on the liver, and I'm going to spell it because I'm probably not going to say it right, is Ceylon cinnamon better?
Ceylon, yeah. So there's different types of cinnamon. Some are more, look how beautiful this is. Some are more that are known to lower blood sugar and things like that. When you're talking about liver toxicity, that usually comes from supplements. So there is evidence of a lot of different supplements that cause liver toxicity. That's common, actually. So I'm talking about, you probably can't eat enough cinnamon to cause liver toxicity, but you know what? Everyone's different. And if you've got liver problems, then you should definitely make sure and talk to your medical team about that.
Perfect. That looks so pretty. And one other question about, can red wine fit into an anti-inflammatory diet?
Well, you're talking to Champagne Nutrition right this very second.
Love that.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. There's a lot of good, especially cardiovascular research on wine in general and the body. You have to be really careful because alcohol interacts with a lot of medications.
Yep.
So a lot of people don't realize that, including steroids and things like that, I think. Yep. And then also too much is very pro-inflammatory. So Agreed. It's really like a little goes a long way.
I agree. It definitely moderation for sure as far as that goes. Wow, is that pretty? And look, you've already made those cute little jars and everything, and that looks wonderful.
Aren't those so fun? I'm very excited about them.
Yeah, I love that. Again, they just look so cute too.
All right. I mean, we are like pretty much done with these. This is actually the first time that I've made this many things, but I wanted so badly to show you what's possible and really empower people to get in the kitchen. Ask for help when you need it. Like, I can't tell you how good it is to get kids in the kitchen, kids and teens. They can chop things. They can help you with these recipes. The book that I wrote is extremely simple. Some people say they're like, it's too simple, but I have a lot of folks that do have autoimmune diseases and they say, thank you. This is exactly what I needed. I want to eat the same thing every day, so I just know what's good and I have it prepared. But if you have a friend or family, neighbor, partner, child, have them help you with this, right? You can be the mastermind.
Absolutely. I love that idea. Question on protein. How many grams of protein is needed daily?
That is an excellent question, and it depends completely on age, gender, activity, disease state. It depends on everything, just like calories. So you call me, we'll work together and I'll calculate it for you. How's that sound?
Oh, I love that. Thank you for offering your time to do that. So Ginger's opening the books for you guys to just let her calculate it for you, and she'll ask you all those questions. Another question was thoughts on protein powders for breakfast smoothies.
Oh yeah, they're great. I use them sometimes. I'm going to take this out because it's looking done. I'm going to set everything out here for you all. That's one reason that I did grab this peanut powder, right? Because this is literally an example of crushed peanuts that has some of the fat removed. So that's like a way that I boosted the protein in here. I also boosted the protein with, I mean, oats are high in protein, but I boosted it with chia seeds too. So there's a lot of, oh, and tofu. I'll do silken tofu sometimes in recipes like smoothies. Otherwise, I use different protein powders. I always try to get them plain with no sugar, colors, vitamins, minerals, like all those additives. A lot of times I use pure pea, PEA.
Okay.
And yeah, I use that sometimes.
Awesome. One more quick question is natural sugar included in plant-based milk inflammatory? I guess I'm not sure if I understand the question. Are you understanding it?
Yeah, so a lot of plant-based milks like soy or almond milk, they have a lot of added sugar, right? And so added sugar is added sugar. It's all really the same chemically. And so, yeah, I choose unsweetened on purpose. I think that's really important. Also, you don't want to get used to like eating everything that's sweet. It's just so much, and the body can get used to sweet and salt. So, yeah, I choose unsweetened.
Perfect. What sheet pan did Ginger use for the demo? Do you have a lip on that one? Is it a standard sheet pan that you used?
It is standard, but thank you for asking because I wanted to show you this.
Oh, magic.
Yep. So this is a silicone liner, and then I don't have to wash my sheet pan, and my life is so much better. So it does have a rim, just so it can kind of contain everything. But this silicone liner goes in the dishwasher. It makes your life so much easier. So please get this. You need it.
I have several of those, and I use them all the time, and they're a dream to clean. There's no work to it. Somebody asked how long oatmeal lasts in the refrigerator.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. So I'm just setting everything out here so you can see it.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I pre-made this because I'm probably going to go through it in the next couple of days because I'm going to use it as a snack also. One of the best things you can do if you might be having a flare or if you're going to be having a surgery or anything like that is to make it dry and then add the liquid in like the night before or the morning that you eat it. That is a pro tip.
Perfect. Let's see. The reason for using peanut butter powder instead of regular peanut butter. I think you answered that by saying some of the fat is already taken out.
Oh yeah, no, that's actually a really good question. Peanut butter in oats is incredible. So you can use peanut butter or almond butter. So a lot of my clients are trying to work on weight reduction. Okay. So I do a lot of times try to choose lower calorie, lower fat foods. However, not everybody is in that category by any means. A lot of people are looking for more calories and more fat. So if you're trying to boost your calories, then you should absolutely use the whole peanut or almond butter. I do that all the time. It just depends on kind of what you're working on and what your diet's like.
I love it. Thoughts on coconut oil versus olive oil versus avocado oil? And I have all of them.
Well, I'm going to put avocado and olive oil together in the same category. So that's an unsaturated, heart-healthy fat. Mm-hmm. Coconut oil is great, but keep in mind, it has a lot of saturated fat in it. So it's just a very different food. We should limit our saturated fat. I think it's like 1 tablespoon of coconut oil has as much as you need in a day. So a little bit goes a long way. It's awesome for greasing pans and high heat stir fries.
Yes. And high heat is, again, the magic word for that. It definitely cooks really, really well. Thoughts on apple cider vinegar? Is it anti-inflammatory?
Ooh, well, it's delicious, right? I use it in salad dressings all the time.
Me too.
The research on like drinking it and putting it on everything is not super strong. I do find a lot of people, they're drinking it night and day and it's making them feel sick. So I definitely don't recommend doing that because like I said before, one food is very rarely going to be the answer, right? Really what you want to look at is here's my anti-inflammatory breakfast. Here's my anti-inflammatory lunch. Here's my anti-inflammatory dinner. This is your foundation. Apple cider vinegar might fit into this, but it's not going to change the power of these foods. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And I'll also say if too much apple cider vinegar can definitely irritate GERD, if you happen to have GERD, some, gastrointestinal reflux disease, anything like that. Let's see, can parchment paper be used instead of the plastic liner?
Sure. Yeah, that's great. I use that all the time. It's definitely a good option.
Awesome. And thoughts on collagen powder for arthritis?
I'm not familiar specifically with the research on arthritis. A lot of people ask me about it. I will tell you it's obviously not plant-based, right? So if you're vegan or vegetarian, then you're not going to use collagen powder. Some people tell me that they feel like it makes their skin look better, so that's cool. As far as I'm familiar with, the research on improving joint health or pain is not very strong.
Okay. One is how to maintain calcium at menopause on a plant-based diet.
Yeah, so it's really important to understand the plant-based sources of calcium. There's a lot of really good ones. Here's one. Beans are one. Some of the greens in here, the oats, I think have some calcium. And the soy milk is fortified. Your calcium needs do go up by 200 milligrams after menopause for bone health. So again, meeting with a registered dietitian like me, we can really talk about, okay, what are the sources in your diet and how are you going to meet those needs? And do you need to consider supplementing?
I love that. Regular oats, steel cut oats, or 5-minute oats?
So these are regular rolled oats. Here they are right here. They're real beauties.
Yes,
Steel
nice
cut,
flakes.
aren't they beautiful?
Yeah.
I love them. Steel cut oats are very different. They will take a lot longer to absorb. Like this is already completely thick and ready to go. Like you can enjoy this almost now. Quick oats are fine. They're usually a little lower in fiber. So I do recommend the regular rolled oats because they're higher in fiber and they are very quick on their own.
Okay. Perfect. Thoughts on corn meal products being anti-inflammatory?
Yeah, corn is a whole grain.
Perfect. That answers that right there. And do you need do you need heat for the overnight oats before eating after refrigeration?
My timer. No, a lot of people I'll literally grab this and go. But if you prefer for it to be hot, take off the lid, stick it in the microwave for a minute, and then it's hot.
Okay, perfect. And I would probably be one at the room temperatures. That would be my own preference. Just funny what I guess it just depends on what you prefer. Why is vitamin B important on plant-based diet?
Yeah, great question. B12 specifically.
Okay.
You can get all other B vitamins from a vegan diet. Actually, that's plentiful. There's B vitamins all over the place in here, but yes. B12 is only in animal foods. That's meat, dairy, eggs, cheese. And so if you're a complete vegan, you don't eat any animal foods, then you have no source of B12 unless you're using fortified products or supplements. And if you have a B12 deficiency, you can have neurological damage. So it's very serious. However, a lot of people think about they're like, oh, I'm not going to get B12 if I don't eat meat. That's not necessarily true. You might eat eggs or dairy. It depends on what kind of vegetarian or vegan you are.
Awesome. Okay, well, that's the last of the questions, and we're finished with that. Ginger, thank you again for lending your time and expertise tonight. I encourage everyone watching tonight to purchase your book, The Anti-Inflammatory Diet Meal Prep, the 6-week plans and 80+ recipes to simplify your healing, to help them get started with what they've learned tonight. You can also contact Ginger at champagnenutrition.com. So ChampagneNutrition.com. And before we signed off tonight, just a reminder that we have several resources and events coming up to help manage your arthritis. So we have the e-resource with recipes and meal plan tips that Ginger is offered to everybody. So you can go get your free copy at arthritis.org/vegan plan and or veg meal plan. Sorry, I'm misreading. I'm hearing you say vegan so often. I'm sorry about that, guys. We have a few webinars coming up. We have Women in Pain, Physician Conversation, Tackling Challenges and Taking Control. It's March 4th from 6 to 7:15 Eastern Standard Time. And it's going to be led by a special guest and NBC News medical contributor, Natalie Azar, who is a doctor. We have Facebook Live event for the Women in Pain, the Real Talk About Daily Living, and that is March 18th from 6 to 7:15 p.m. There's going to be a special guest, Bonnie Simpson Mason, an orthopedic surgeon and RA patient. And there's going to be a lot of sharing tips and insights and encouraging you to help navigate relationships and family and taking control. COVID and arthritis, the vaccine safety, effectiveness, and access, March 9th, 6 to 7:15 Eastern. And again, just answering all of those questions that you guys might have about autoimmune diseases and who is the vaccine for and who is it not for. And you can register for that at thearthritis.org/webinars. The COVID-19 vaccines and arthritis research study. The Arthritis Foundation is working with Johns Hopkins University, and they're doing a research panel. And you can check and see if you're eligible by going to vaccineresponse.org. And I know Heidi Sedemeyer, she's actually gone ahead and, recommended, she was talking about the vaccine. And I know a lot of our friends on Facebook have already gotten the link from Julie Eller and have already done that, me included. We've got our Live Yes podcasts. We'd love to have you guys take a look at, you can even rewatch the video from tonight and listen to Ginger's podcast episode about anti-inflammatory myths and facts. We also have our other resources out there, the Live Yes Connect groups and online community. We've got the helpline, which is it's got specialists that man it 24/7, and the number is 1-800-283-7800. You can also submit questions at arthritis.org/I-need-help. We've got our Insights program that we've talked about, as well as our JA Insights. The link is listed there. And as a closing reminder, please remember that in a few days, you're going to receive a survey about your experience tonight. Please take the time to fill out the survey out completely and honestly so we can best serve you guys in the future. Your feedback helps us improve educational events to help with your needs and wants. And thank you again for everybody that has tuned in tonight, and take care.